welcome to the Unofficial Unreal Engine Podcast, where we talk about all things Unreal and also Canadian Putin. We're your hosts. My name is Alex Coulombe, and this is...
This is Jacob. Welcome to the podcast, folks. As always, I'm going to remind you to like, rate, subscribe, all that. We really appreciate your feedback. We've really been enjoying all the folks listening in. It's so great to hear from you guys when you reach out. So thank you. And we have an exciting episode today, don't we, Alex?
We do. First and foremost, let's address the elephant in the room, or rather the studio in the room for anyone who's watching the video feed. Where are we, Jacob?
That's a great question. We are, in fact, back in the Light Twist studio. Big thanks to Vikas and the team there. It might not be our orange chairs, Alex, but I think this is a bit of an upgrade. I got to say, this is pretty nice. It's a good reason to check out the YouTube videos if you haven't already.
It is. And what's going on behind us? It looks like we got some guitars. Are we going to have a music show here?
Oh, we'll find out. As it turns out, we got a special guest with us today.
What?
Q rising at it. We got to. I don't know. We didn't come up with a Q word. There he is.
Yeah, we should have.
Hey, I was just hiding under the table for like a really long time, wondering like, is there a Q?
It was a long prep period. He was there for a while. We feel bad about it, but not that bad. All right.
Wonderful to be on the show, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And before we give a proper introduction, part and parcel with our show is to first ask a series of questions. Take it away, Jacob.
Yeah. Essentially what this is going to be some word associations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say a word and just going to, speak to the first thing that comes in your head. It doesn't have to be a one-word answer, but it has to be a short answer. And it should be fairly straightforward. All right. All right. First word, home.
Begins.
Work.
Play.
Food.
People.
Travel.
Fun.
Drink.
Party.
Unreal Engine.
Unity.
Ooh, wow. The first Unity response. The first person who took that in a competitive sense. I like that. Well, Alex, would you like to actually introduce our special guest here today?
Yes, very excited to have David Liu on the show. David's a dear friend who I've known for a number of years now. How many years exactly, I could not tell you. But he has an incredible background of so many different amazing industries and companies and specialties, and also just an all-around nice guy. David, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, man, guys, it's such a pleasure and privilege to be on the show with both of you. It's like I've been listening to your shows for so long. It's just weird that now I am actually here in person. So I've worked I started as a filmmaker and went into game design and went into tech. And before I knew it, I was leading a VR team at a cable company. And that was a lot of fun. I think that's where we met for the first time, Alex. And after that, I did a lot of startup-y things. And now I'm in a brief career break. So that's given me a lot of time to sort of like explore all manner of things that we can definitely talk about. But also explains why we could, go on a little jaunt. That we might actually talk more about soon.
Oh, we will. And before we get there, I got to ask, this is the Unreal Engine Podcast. Tell us a little bit about your background and
relationship to Unreal or Epic Games or anything.
What's your relationship to Unreal? Apparently it's very complicated,
It is complicated. Look, I love Unreal. I think Unreal does a lot of amazing things that Unity can't do very well. It is still probably like my 30% game engine that I use on a regular basis. Sorry guys, but let's put it this way. Unreal Engine 5 is incredible and is something that I think is poised to change game development in many ways. I still have nothing but extreme respect for the Roblox. Not Roblox. Fortnite. Whoops, cut that out.
Wow. I think we got to kick him out, Alex.
The Fortnite game creator situation that they had there. So, look, I've used it. I like it. I have to admit, I'm more of a Unity guy. But hey, Unreal Engine's great.
Yeah. And to be fair, a lot of the incredible work I've seen David do has been with volumetric capture. And I'll admit that when it comes to processing and using volumetric capture, I often still will be in Unity as well. So, hey, I get it.
Wow, come clean, Alex. This is quite the episode so far.
Exactly. I
This
never
is
thought I'd hear Alex say that.
We're at confession already. Wow. Well,
yeah, and for anyone who isn't going to bother to look up David directly, at least search on Steam for Aeronaut. It's a very impressive volumetric music video with Billy Corrigan, a really impressive piece of work that still holds up all these years later. Since the advent of volumetric capture.
That's really nice of you to say, Alex. Man, that's a story we can get into as well. But all credit goes out to the team that I worked with. But basically, it was we volumetrically captured Billy Corrigan and made an interactive music experience that anyone can try with a tethered VR headset. Go try it.
So how did you get into just AR, VR in general? I feel like everyone kind of has a story there.
Yeah. Oh man, I have a long answer and a short answer. I'll give it a short answer. Basically, when I was trained as a filmmaker, so I made ads for TV for quite a while. And when I made the pivot to game development, I also happened to be doing a lot of VR stuff. So I was at I was at Carnegie Mellon University, which was really famous for having a pretty robust VR department. So we get to play with like the pre-DK1 stuff. We played with the DK1 stuff as well, and I managed to build a few things on that as well. So when an opportunity came for me so I was like full on game development, right? But then there was this opportunity to join an innovation lab in New York with Viacom. I took it because they're looking for someone who could meld the world of film and the world of games and figure out what VR is. And I was just very privileged to be able to sort of do that. I was just in the right place at the right time, right? So one thing led to another. I started a team with Rob Ruffler. You guys might have heard of him as well, my business partner at Viacom, but both of us basically created a department and ran it for a couple of years. And through that, we met lots of industry friends, including Alex here.
Yeah, Rob is great. And I have to say, I'm extremely jealous of David and his backstory. When I was a kid, I saw this incredible lecture series by a gentleman by the name of Randy Pausch called The Last Lecture Series about this program at Carnegie Mellon that he'd helped develop, which involved a lot of different disciplines coming together to build virtual worlds. I believe the group now is called the Entertainment Technology Center. Is that right, David?
That is right, sir. So that is my alma mater. Like that.
And that's all that matters. I really wanted to be part of that program. And then when it came to applying to colleges, I saw that Carnegie Mellon required a physics SAT too. And I was like, well, it is too late for me to do that. So I didn't even apply. But I've always been jealous of anyone who's gotten to go through that program.
I remember a few of the VR experiences that came out of Carnegie Mellon early. Were there notable? I remember one that was a spy, like it was like a spy experience. Maybe that was.
Oh, you're thinking
Shell Games.
Yeah, Shell Games and the VR, like James Bond, Escape the Room kind of stuff.
I Expect You to Die. Yeah.
I remember that, but there was an earlier one that was very much like a student project. I'll figure it out while we're talking.
Oh man,
these are the weird associations that come out of my head while we're.
That's super exciting for me to hear, though. I think I know what you're talking about. The name escapes me, but there were a lot of really awesome VR things that came out of the department that we were in. I think I was for me, I was literally year 2 of all the VR projects that came out of ETC. So I wonder what that project is.
David, are you allowed to say anything about your time in Electronic Arts?
Yeah, I mean, very briefly. I don't want to bore you guys to death, but basically, I worked on a game that some of you might play called Sims 4. So I helped ship that. I joined basically as part of the production team to get it out the door, right? So I was there for a couple of months and helped the team sort of get it to the very end. I was the guy in charge of a lot of bad puns. The garden. So if paintings, collections, gardening, cooking. I still remember that. It was a lot of fun. It's a really fun crew. And honestly, if it weren't for Viacom, I'd probably still want to be working there. But, life works in strange ways.
Jacob, I don't know if you played The Sims when you were a kid, but for me, it was seminal in my interest in architecture because it basically was BIM. It was like, instead of drawing two lines and saying this is a wall, it's like, no, you're actually going to place a wall and place a door and like construct the house in this more smart modeling kind of way that has become standard now in the architecture and construction industry. But at the time of Sims 1 was, not how any of that was done.
I will say I never got a chance to play Sims. I never really got into it. But I will say that I loved games, like it to this degree you're talking about, like, the roller coaster tycoons of the world.
So
where
good.
You're building those. And Roller Coaster Tycoon has I think we've already mentioned this, like it has one of these crazy programming backstories that is just insane to talk about. It's maybe out of scope here, but I love those games, and I think they were a precursor to a lot of the kind of build your world adventures that we see today, in the sense that there's a lot of interesting dynamics and kind of just the replayability idea, I think, really existed as a result of games that let you kind of build your own little worlds and exist in them. Which I think we take for granted today, maybe.
Totally. Like, I think back in the day, like the game studio made The Sims, called Maxis, the original game studio. Their slogan was electronic toys, right? And for me, like, that was such a big thing because that exemplified all the things we're making. SimCity, SimAnt, SimEarth. Like, they were not really games in traditional sense, in that there was a goal. You just played around with it. So I'm glad other game studios have taken that further. I love the term electronic toys.
Yeah.
How do you feel about like developing a game like Sims 4, where you release it and then you inevitably have to find out all the weird things people are doing in the game you've just built? Like, is there, especially in a game like Sims 4, I've seen so many wacky interpretations of how to play that game that I find it very fascinating.
I mean, man, like I can't take any credit for the emergence and the possibility space of what The Sims 4 is. Like, I joined fairly late in the project, but already, like, when I joined, like they were already showing me, like, David, check out all these things that all our players are doing with it, right? So like the amazing thing about electronic toys, about sim games, about is that it's emergent. A lot of emergent systems allow you to do all sorts of crazy things with it that the game designers probably never really intended to. Like, there was literally a player, I think, who we followed on the team, or we sort of watched, who would build the most architecturally unsound houses, right? Just to try to break the game. And that is interesting for us as game developers to see, because it's like, we need to make sure the pathfinding and everything works, but also it's just cool. Like, this is someone who wanted to break the game, but also have fun with it. And that's our definition of having fun as well. Like, you're testing the systems and limits of what the game can do.
Yeah, I saw along those lines, I saw, man, I'm going to forget the name of the game. It's like, it's like an 8-bit style, kind of like you build your, like, home. Man, I'm doing terrible tonight in terms of recall. This is not good. But I saw someone had built a full computer in it that could play Doom. And like, that's been done before in like Minecraft and stuff like that, right? Like, it is whatever, right? But they had the team that was building this found out that it was not going to be possible with like the latency between certain components. So they had to go and write a mod to improve the response time of like their transistors by some enormous factor. So they went back and modified the game to enable this weird edge case that they had just found, which was like building a basic graphics processor in this game. I just find that kind of stuff a lot.
That's insane, man.
Yeah. David, can you recall a time where something important needed to change in a game because of what had happened with QA testing and that kind of thing?
That's a really good question.
While you think about that for a second, did you hear the joke about the QA tester?
No, tell me.
QA tester walks into a bar, orders a beer, orders 9,999 beers, orders 0 beers, orders -1 beer, orders a lizard, orders on and on.
Select our drop table. Yeah.
Alex, I wish I have an easy and short answer for you to that question, but there are loads of examples that come to my head. None of them are particularly interesting because, man, QA testing is also extremely highly underrated.
Yeah.
Like the guys who do it, they're the ones who will basically literally that. So they would solve like, okay, we realize that this if you store 99 items in your kit and you get one more, it resets to 0. I mean, this bug didn't actually happen, but that's the kind of stuff they would find, right? And be like, oh crap, okay, so there's a problem there, the integer value there, so that we need to go fix that. Not particularly exciting, but game breaking, right?
Yeah. Important.
Have you guys heard of? I saw. Man, I'm just full of random facts tonight. I saw recently a video too about Valve, and this was new to me. I'm not all that familiar with Valve's process. I've never met someone who's worked at Valve. I don't think I probably have, but I learned about their philosophy around testing and QA, and maybe David, but I didn't realize how insane they are about testing. But apparently this is something that they're very passionate about, and that they test every single iteration as quickly as possible, as often as possible. And I didn't realize about, like, for example, Portal, which was one of my favorite games.
So good.
Amazing.
So they acquired this like student group, right, who built this other game. I can't remember the name of it. And it was like Portal, but it was essentially like a horror game. It was kind of more in the style of like Doom and Quake and stuff like that.
I believe
it had all these like very
Narbacular Drop. I think that was the name.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You got it. It was full of all these very grungy textures, stuff like that. And immediately, and they started populating the world. They started building more levels as they got acquired, and they had to build the game. And then they found that like people were so distracted by like the ambiance and the stuff going on the walls and stuff like that, that they were ignoring pieces of like these puzzles they were building, and they scrapped the whole thing and started over like with this white box. And all of a sudden everyone was all totally capable of focusing in on the game. And I also remember the story about like the smooth jazz joke at the beginning being like, we tested this with 10 different demographics, and the smooth jazz joke at the beginning of Portal 1 was such a killer that we had to keep it in, which I just find hilarious. But
great. David, tell us something that you think a lot of people probably don't understand about game development or product development or experience development, anything in that wheelhouse.
Oh gosh, man! Like, how much time do we have? I feel like this is a 4-hour long.
I want to get to the Star Wars thing.
Oh man, like okay. One of the things that I learned that you quickly have to unlearn when you come from film is the idea of building to spec, right? Or like waterfall, right? I think I'm sure a lot of your viewers already know about this, but like game development is very iterative. So is product development, honestly. The common thing you hear is to fail fast, to find the fun. And that is really, really true. And it's something that I think can be taken to extremes, to be clear. But I think a nice medium is sort of like balancing quickly learning what is fun and what resonates with your guests and how much it costs to do that, right?
Yeah.
So definitely lots more to say about that. We have only 30 seconds, and I definitely went over already. But man, this is a big bugbear of mine to talk about.
I got to ask though, how do you define fun there? Like, how do you measure that in an analytical process? Because it sounds like you got to do a bit of both, right?
Yeah. So play testing is huge. So getting people on site and to do really starting with qualitative play testing. So you just literally get them to play the game or the prototype and watch them and then ask playtesting questions after that. It's like a common practice to do. So let's have a very early prototype of a game, and you just invite 4 or 5 people to usually you start with like your internal team members or like the folks next door, and you just see how they react to it. And a lot of it is very qualitative. A lot of it is then questions like, "Oh, what do you think just played? Oh, would you recommend this to a friend?" Things like that, and sort of getting their sense of what resonated with them. At some point, you need to start looking at like quantitative stuff. So that's when you probably get into alpha. You can send it out to like a closed developer group and closed beta group, and so a closed alpha group and so on. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I feel like this is definitely a can of worms.
I'm enjoying it. I will say though, we do have a big topic to talk about today. So I can see Alex's excitement bubbling up. We gotta swing it over.
I see his head bobbing. I'm like, all right, Alex wants to talk about this.
Yeah, and I think everything we're talking about so far will lead pretty actually well into this larger discussion. Let's see, how do we set this up? So let's rewind a little bit. The next stage, it was this incredible event that I touched briefly on in the podcast. It was happening out in Los Angeles a little over a month ago. And as part of that, we had heard at some point that this event, this amazing thing over in Florida called Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser, was going to close. And the leader of No Proscenium, one Noah Nelson, really, really wanted to go to this, and it kind of accepted that he was not going to be able to go. And a lot of incredible folks in the No Proscenium community rallied together to try to make sure that he could go. Him, Kathryn Yu, Nicholas Fortuno, Jessica Crane, all these really cool people got to go. They had an amazing experience. And I was so excited to hear about what that experience was going to be. Because I also assumed, like, I'm never going to get to go see this thing, but I will live vicariously through Noah and Nelson and hear about this. And that'll be great and good enough for me. But then one day on Twitter or X, as I guess it's called now, David had pinged our little group. And David, what did you say?
So I was like, "Hey, does anybody want to go to Galactic Starcruiser?" So building out that story, I mean, basically, so we're all friends with Kathryn Yu, and she was like trying to find ways for us to go, Alex, and basically she was like, "All right, David, I'm gonna do everything it takes to make sure you go." Right. So through some magic and various Discord groups, she managed to get tickets, or she managed to find tickets and slots, which I immediately jumped to take. Like literally, I was having breakfast with my wife, and I got this call from her, Kathryn Yu. I was like, "Uh-oh." And I picked up the phone. She was like, buy tickets now. So I was like, "Oh crap." So I run to my computer, and lo and behold, tickets were on sale. I called the hotline, and before I knew it, like, we got the tickets, which is amazing. Never thought it would happen. I was in shock. The cast member on the other line was like laughing away at how gobsmacked I was. The great news is after that, I was like, okay, I can't go alone. I need to go with friends. And who better to go with than my little tight-knit circle of experienced designer friends. We have a little group, DM group that we have on Twitter, Alex. So I was just like, all right, friends, I have tickets. Let's do it. And the funny thing is that within 5 minutes, I think Alex was like, holy bleep, right? Like, and I was like, yes, is that a yes? And then before we knew it, like, I think we got a nice group going. And then we were going to Galactic Starcruiser. Pretty
yeah,
cool.
I was really thrilled to be able to use this as a way to celebrate some colleagues who have been stationed over in Austin, Texas for a while. And we're finally going to be able to leave. And I think like, oh, one of them's coming back to New York City. One of them's going to Arizona. I want to do a celebration with both of them. That's probably not going to happen. But this became an opportunity to get both of them into one place, but then also bring another colleague who none of us had met in person before. And David very kindly allowed this event to be him plus a bunch of people from my company.
Allowed? It's more like a privilege, man. It was such a blast. It was so cool. Your colleagues. I mean, it's funny. Like the experience transforms the group dynamics a little bit. Like I went in as like total strangers, like with the exception of you and Kevin, who is also part of like a little circle. Like I didn't know anyone, the other two folks, right? But by the end of the 3 days, like I was like, we are all best friends. We are. we have gone through a lot together. The 3 days felt like 3 years.
Agreed.
Or something.
Yeah, and David.
All right.
Too much in the
wait. Okay. We got to stop this because I'm very jealous. This sounds pretty awesome, but we got to start from the beginning. All right, because if you're gonna, evoke this emotion where I now know I'm not gonna go. Right. You got to start at the beginning, and I got to live vicariously, guys. All right, you got to start. What was it like? All right, you're flying in. You get to the Disney's doorstep. What's going on?
Right. So we all came in on different flights, different places. There were weather concerns. I think a lot of us thought our flights might be potentially canceled. Instead, we ended up with delays. And by the way, like for anyone who's like, what are they even talking about right now? I'm tempted to be like, why don't we describe what this thing is? But I'm also tempted to be like, let's just like go through the whole thing and our listeners can decide what exactly this is. But maybe if you don't already know what Galactic Starcruiser is, don't Google it yet. Like, let us kind of take you through a journey and see it for yourselves. David, you guys arrived first. So why don't you talk about your first impressions, then I'll talk about us in the second group.
Great segue. Before I go there, I want to ask, how deep into spoiler territory should we get into for your listeners?
I think we go all the way.
Yeah.
In the sense that we should say out loud when there are spoilers, but given that it is closing, and what date is it closing?
Like September
30th. Right.
If you are one of the lucky people who will be going between now and the end of September, you can leave, right? You can leave. Everyone else, you can stay, and we can hear the full story.
Sounds good to me. All right, so we're going to go full spoiler territory. Spoiler alert for everyone listening. We're going to go full spoiler about an entire experience that we went through with Galactic Starcruiser.
Here we go.
So, I got in and I was with Kevin. So we met at the airport because our flight got in about the same time. Or rather, Kevin was already at the airport. So we took an Uber down to the property, which is not in Disney World itself. It's actually like somewhere in the periphery of Hollywood Studios, if you know the sort of geography of the area. So it was like already kind of interesting because there was a lot of security. Like I think there were like 2 boom gates or something like that we had to go through. Like there's a big sign that says Galactic Star Wars, Galactic Starcruiser. Went through that, and that's where to roll our windows down at one of the boom gates, and the folks already in character. Like Halcyon Rebels already in character. Like, oh, are you joining today's voyage? I'm like, oh, voyage. Yeah, we're here for voyage. Okay, well, sir, what's your name? And so we get a name, and you're like, all right, checks out. And then we went through, and already like there was like music playing and like, and it was like super white glove. Like, I mean, I guess you're paying a lot of money for this, and I guess this experience was like exactly like going on a cruise. So we unloaded our stuff, and you had all the cast members who were like proper bellboys who sort of brought your luggage to one side, and they knew who you were. You got sort of asked to join a line, and basically imagine you're at this sort of like very brutalist style terminal. Hey, that's a picture of us. Look at that. So it's me and Kevin. So two super brutal. It's like, you know, they took our bags away from us. They quickly gave us our magic bands, what they call M bands, because this is in the Star Wars universe. So that little thing, the white thing you see in my hand, that's the M band. And they're like, take a picture, and this is a picture. And then very quickly after that, like there's a line, a bit of a wait because it's extremely warm. Like, you know, they gave us frozen grapes and cold water, but the entire experience was like super smooth, super awesome. I felt like it's, you know, VIP, which I guess is the whole point. And then we went in, surrounding us already with people in costumes, and Kevin and I with costumes we were totally not changed. We're just like, okay, we're going to stick out for a little bit. But then you go down this corridor, which you see in the photographs here. So we're all like in line to board the shuttle, right? And on this shuttle, we'll be taken up into the Halcyon, which is the Chandrillion cruise liner that we would have to go. So we entered it. This is it. So this is so we eventually entered the docking area. But before we went to this area though, there was this really cool part where there was an actual safety briefing, right? So we had a screen that explained to us, this is a real alarm, right? This is not a story. So please know this, because in case of a real emergency, this is it, man. You got pictures of everything. So this video basically explained what a real emergency was and what a fake emergency was, because there were differences between the two. Because spoiler alert, I guess, for people who are already watching it, there will be fake emergencies, which are like story events that we'll get to once you're on board. So once we passed this safety video, we got into that launch pod, and it was super diegetic. Like it was It was an elevator. It was themed to be a really, really cool launch pod. And the launch pod would like lift off on the planet. Like we could feel a little bit of G-force. And there were proper windows outside where you see yourself blast into space. And then all these cargo pods then come over and sort of pull you to the Halcyon. And it's
all right. I got some questions already. We got to pause because this is pretty cool. So how did they handle, for example, like, you come with your phone, you come with all this other stuff. I'm curious where like the level of, like, are we already at the point where the level of immersion has kicked up, or are we kind of easing into it a little bit here?
So they did a really good job making sure that your phone was part of the environment. So you had to download a DataPad app, which allowed you to interact with your environment via an app on your phone, right? So they brought your phone into the experience as well. But basically, brilliant. At this point, it was like you're full immersion. Like, I mean, look at this picture, man. Like we were on technically really just in an elevator, but you would.
She is purple. She is bright purple.
Yeah, people were hardcore dressing up. Like we had costumes, but we were like, with the exception of Alex, because his costumes were awesome. The rest of us were kind of like just sort of like drapey clothes that we call Star Wars.
I thought they like gave you costumes. Is that not true? You gotta show up in your Jedi robes and everything.
Exactly. There were so many people who want to be Jedis, and there'd be like Jedi robes and Sith people and so on and so forth. But
so it's just a bunch of like fake Palpatines running around all the entire time.
Yeah, I actually, and we might be getting ahead of ourselves. Like I wondered what the cast members would do with like the fake Palpatines and the fake stormtroopers you have around. And the reality is to just ignore the fact that you have those costumes.
Okay. We are getting ahead of ourselves. All right. You rode the elevator up. You got to the first floor. Alex, let's pass it over to you. What was your experience here at the beginning?
Nothing really important to say yet, except, we were about an hour behind. So this is Dante and Marshall and myself, and we had that same experience kind of getting through. And then we met up in our room quickly. Here's David in the amazing bunk beds. Like, I loved how incredibly diegetic the rooms felt. No hotel room has ever felt as Star Warsy as these rooms.
And I want to put it out there, that little cubby hole called a bunk bed is extremely comfortable. Like, it looks small, but it's kind of spacious. I really like sleeping in it.
Because that was the big, and again, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but the biggest critiques I heard of the Starcruiser were like, okay, you're spending a lot of money here. There's no windows. Like, I think it very much had people came into it with different expectations, right? But actually, maybe that's a good question. What were your expectations going into this?
Yeah, I think I speak for myself, but I had a feeling that our party was sort of like we were coming in with the lens of designers. Like we have done a little bit of immersive design, so we know what to look for. So I think we had to compartmentalize the side of us and sort of try to be a guest and a consumer as well. So it's a complex mindset, I guess, or frame of mind that we had to go into when we entered the ship. But the short answer, I guess, is like, we expected, we were open to everything. Like I think we were sort of tempered down what this could be, while knowing that we paid like a total of $7.5 total for this, which is a shitload of money. Excuse my French. But man, so it's like, it's got to be at least a cruise or better, I guess is one simple way of saying it.
Wow.
Yeah, just a little.
Alex, what was your expectation like?
I really went in pretty blind. Like, I'd heard a few things about this. I had seen a GDC talk last year that gone into great detail about the narrative structure of this. I did my best to forget as much of that as possible. I was expecting an immersive theater experience that was going to feel like it was in the Star Wars universe. And I assumed it was maybe going to be a little bit more Star Warsy than my taste, because I'm a medium Star Wars fan, not a huge Star Wars fan. And I can already tell you, like, it was perfect. It was like everything about it was exactly to my taste and quite wonderful.
I think they did a really good job basically building for like both hardcore fans and people who knew barely anything about Star Wars. Like, it was a space cruise with a layer of Star Wars over it, really. So that.
All right.
Yeah, so immersive theater and cruise ship. Those are kind of the two pillars to keep in mind.
I didn't realize how because you guys have mentioned cruise ship now a couple of times. I didn't realize how this was positioned as a replacement for a normal cruise. Do you think that's accurate in the sense that like they were trying to say, hey, you could go on a Carnival, or you could go here, and is that how they price this thing? Like I don't know. It's interesting.
It's than a lot of like mid-tier cruises, I would say, for the number of nights you're there. So I think the theme, the whole expectation of setting up as a cruise both helped and hurt it in some ways. Like the price for value. So it's not the size of an actual cruise ship, right? You're not going to be able to have a pool. You're not going to be able to see the sun. You're not going to go on shore excursions no, that's not true. You do have one shore excursion to Batu. So I guess they work with the framework of the cruise. I know a lot of criticisms against it were like, oh, this is not exactly like a cruise because we only have a few rooms to go to. And the food, while fantastic, is not, it's not like a cruise meal. Although again, I'll stress, it is fantastic. The dining was exquisite. Okay.
So good.
All right. We're getting ahead of ourselves.
The bantha meat's so good.
You're in the lobby. What happened?
So, well, let's think about the structure a little bit. So you can see a little bit of the schedule here for day one, from 1 o'clock to pretty much 4. It was kind of like everyone getting settled in, getting.
That's crunchy. You're gonna have to read that.
Yeah, let me try refreshing it there. Come on, Google.
Okay. A little better.
Close enough. So we all had to kind of settle and eat some food, say hi to each other, decide what kind of characters we were going to have. I was Daro Schiff. I was in the Narkina 5 prison uniform. I'd been imprisoned for pushing 2 stormtroopers off a bridge that had no railing. I mean, it wasn't my fault. I should have been Star Wars OSHA involved to make sure this kind of thing didn't happen. And I had escaped, but whenever someone from the First Order asked me, I said I had served my time and had made it over there. But it was a great opportunity to just kind of get your bearings on everything. And then we had ship muster in the lobby. David, what happened during muster?
So this is really clever. So a ship muster, for those of you who haven't been on cruise ships, is basically it's something par for the course, right? Like it's an event where in an event of emergency on a cruise ship, these are the stations you report to. But these are also narrative devices for you to sort of get to the main lobby atrium area because an event will be happening. So the way they structured this, and not to get too deep into the design of this, unless we want to, is that they have like main story events in this huge giant atrium. This is like essentially the closest thing you have to like a stage for the performers, as well as a place for us to congregate. So ship muster was the first agenda, and that's when the first arc of the whole story sort of kicks off. So prior to all that was everything Alex said, was exploration, was having lunch, was getting into costume, it was sort of getting to know who our characters were. I was Chumbawamba, and I'm shocked no one got it. So I guess that totally horribly ages me. Chumbawamba from Endor's Moon. I was an Ewok smuggler. But anyway, like it was they did a really good job sort of using the ship muster as one of the devices to get us there.
So what was the story? We're spoiling things here. We got to start the story.
Breaks my heart to say. Yeah.
175th anniversary of the ship, right? I think that's right. And the ship has all sorts of history. It's allegedly where Han Solo and Leia had like their honeymoon, and you can even find like their initials scratched into a pipe, which is pretty cool. And so there's, first of all, just the setting itself has a certain amount of history. And in theory, we think that we're on just kind of a nice little cruise ship where we'll go to Batu on the next day and everything's going to go well. But then, David, someone unexpected arrives. Who comes? When we
So there was an alarm at some point later in the day, during muster itself, and they introduce the First Order Lieutenant Croy. Bum, bum, bum. So he comes in with flanked by 2 stormtroopers, and they're basically like, "We suspect that there are like sympathizers for the resistance here," or something like that. I can't do a British accent, but basically like that the story kicks off. So it's no longer just a cruise now. It's heavily hinted that there are resistance sympathizers and the First Order is on it, right? So they do a really good job of introducing you to the main cast of characters here. In addition to Lieutenant Croy from the First Order, We meet the cruise director, Lenka Bach, who's clearly a resistance sympathizer. They made that super clear to you. There is also
because there are like kids on board and they want to make sure the kids get it.
Yeah. They're really on the nose about this, but it did not matter because I think these things need to be explained really clearly. They also introduced like these smuggler people. So basically, you had a celebrity on board. She wasn't there yet, but Gaia is a famous singer. Twilight singer, and her manager though was there. This guy called Wraith Cole. So he's just suave, dashing, handsome Han Solo type. He's definitely dressed in like a smuggler garb, but he's also the manager for Gaia. So you meet all these, Muster. You meet all these wonderful characters, and instantly, I guess we know. Oh, these are the tracks you can follow, and if you follow them, and the minute Muster ends, you can sort of pick your side.
How to find a shot of Wraith.
Wait, so who is this that we're seeing here?
Yeah, so this is Wraith Cole, the manager for Gaia, and so he basically, so not to get ahead of ourselves as well, but the cast members, they do an amazing job trying to remember your name, and I guess like Chumbawamba was harder to remember than Dante. But Dante, who's next party here, basically everyone remembered his name. So I can remember this very scene where basically like Wraith is coming by, Dante, I can't wait to see you tomorrow. We're going to work together, right? And he would basically do that sort of thing.
That's cool. All right.
And
so,
yeah,
this first narrative moment, right? Like, seems like it kind of snaps you into the story, and you're saying that there are these paths. What do you mean by that? Like, are there like rooms you follow? Is there conversation? Like, do you talk to the cast members to kind of activate those story paths? Is that kind of how that works?
Absolutely. Alex, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so there was something I think quite lovely about the way this was structured. I've done a lot of immersive theater experiences before where you can feel that the performers are a little bit overwhelmed because they need to try to not only spend meaningful time with everyone who's there, but they need to perform certain functions. They have to give everyone a certain mission or give 10 people this mission, 10 people this mission. And I think the experience very intelligently offloads a lot of that to the app. So what that means is that usually when you are speaking to one of the cast members, you are having a much more unique, special experience that may lead to a side mission or something like that. You do build up what's called familiarity with each of the primary characters, which is reflected in your app. But when it comes to actually choosing your path and reflecting different missions, most of that happens inside of the app. Now, the video I was just showing, this was with Lieutenant Croy of the First Order. And at the beginning, he kind of made it clear, like anyone who is kind of interested in what I have to say about peace and order in the galaxy, like come over here. And then he scanned all of our little magic bands, which I think...
I was about to ask, like, how are you registering the familiarity? So they're scanning the NFC chips in your magic band. Yeah. Which, by the way, for those who haven't been to Disney recently, that's how you pay for stuff in Disney World. Is you walk around and you spend like $20 everywhere by tapping your bracelet. But you're saying that this is how you're registering your kind of interest in a specific topic. That's fascinating.
I want to throw it out there that in addition to scanning your M-bands, there's definitely a proximity sensor with your M-bands as well, because there were many times where I just hung around in the same approximate area as Wraith Cole, the smuggler guy, right? And immediately my app knew. Right. And so like there were times that just because we're in the same room, our familiarity would go up. So this is exactly the same tech if you've gone to Disney World, where like if you sit down in one of the dining restaurants, the waiters know exactly where the servers know exactly where to deliver your food. It's just magical. And I'm glad they used it in this experience.
I bet they use and I will nerd out a little bit about this because this is Unreal Engine Podcast and unofficial Unreal Engine Podcast. And we have to talk a little tech here. But this is not similar to what we get now with the directional NFC that we get in our phones, right? I can't remember the name of this, right? But I'm assuming it's a similar thing where you can detect not only, when it's close to something, but the orientation of it, which is very tricky because it, in reality, like, most ways that you detect the direction and position of things, as all of the people on this call know, because they are into VR and AR and stuff like that, is you got to triangulate it in some way. Either you could there's Inside Out and Slam, which is all kind of more AI based, and that's maybe a little different, and that's not relevant here. But everything else is about triangulating your position in some way, shape, or form to figure out where you are and what direction you're facing. NFC, the directional NFC works because the device has itself a gyroscope and can position itself relative to other objects. And then you also have things like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Yeah, nowadays.
We'll talk more about that.
All right.
To zoom out a little bit for a moment, though, let me bring up the structure that I did learn about at GDC, but I do think it was a useful framing to come into this for. There's a great slide that Sarah Thatcher was showing at GDC, basically saying, typically when you think of a branching narrative, you have like everyone starting from similar points, and it gets more and more complex, and everyone kind of goes off into their own directions. Really hard to do that well and meaningfully in an immersive experience and give everyone meaningful endings. So basically, I saw Sarah do exactly the thing that I saw a lot in architecture school, where they say like, well, what if this is your project? And they flip it upside down. So they flipped the branching narrative structure and said, how about we try to give everyone a lot of different paths to start on? And we give them kind of like all these little meaningful, moments and let's call them mini endings. And then everyone can kind of be funneled into the same, major ending, but they all feel like it is part of their story and it's something that they've earned. And it does feel like a payoff to their own personal story, even though the big climactic finale is something that everyone is witnessing together.
Right. I remember that talk as well, and you've said it so well, Alex. So basically, the funneling structure, the funneled string of pearls that they eventually built for this, was allowed us to sort of have a lot of like different varied experiences on the first day, which culminated in one major event on the last day. But on top of that, they did a really good job as well of allowing us sort of like earned finales, which is like if you have done enough missions for a certain character, you get an additional layer on top of this ending that everyone else gets at the end. That feels earned, and it's very private. It's just a few characters, and they managed to deliver that illusion so well that I was just so impressed with it.
All right.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people go into this with a sense of FOMO, like, oh, I can't believe so-and-so got to have this ending or this one or this one. I didn't feel that way at all. I felt like the experiences that I got to have were meaningful. They culminated in something. They built upon each other, and it would have been interesting to get some of the other endings and other parts of the story, but that wasn't my story. And so, I was very, very happy with the experiences I had. And I liked hearing other people talk about their stories and the journeys they had. And it felt like we were sharing this communal experience where everyone gets to have something unique that's for them.
Right on.
Briefly, while we're talking about the tech side of this, I do want to shout out some of the Unreal Engine stuff. The little video I have playing here. I'm showing two things. I've got the screens that are on the side and then also the bridge. Everyone got to have bridge training. So some experiences were things everyone got to have, like bridge training and lightsaber training. And then there were more special things that only some people got to have. But this is all Unreal Engine. So what's kind of cool is these screens, you see asteroids floating by. These screens carry through all the hotel rooms. And if there are asteroids, if we're going into hyperspace, if there's a Starcruiser, a Star Destroyer that's coming by, you can see all those things. So there is a world where if you're a super introvert or you're just overwhelmed by everything going on and you decide to stay in your room the whole time, you're going to get some sense of the story just by looking out your space window and seeing the different things that are happening over there. And hopefully occasionally, if you see that we're blasting into hyperspace, it gets you out of your room because you want to go find out, why did we just go into hyperspace? I don't think this was part of the original itinerary. But the way that this used end display and connected all these different screens together for this really robust space experience was very, very impressive on a technical level.
So how do you know it's Unreal Engine?
Because I talked to some people who told me it was Unreal Engine.
We asked. But I think it's one of those, like, if you looked at it, you would know. Like, if you've used Unreal Engine enough, you sort of like, this is not any other engine that's out there. But everything that Alex said, I think, on top of being a technical achievement, connect all the windows in your hotel room. So people complain that your cabins don't have windows. Well, no, you have one space window, and the space window is actually, the illusion of it being in space window is fairly well done. They use a really, really good lenticular display to sort of warp the monitor so it looks like it's actually a proper window porthole out into space. It was a great design device as well. Like what everything that Alex said, like it forced you to sort of pay attention to what's going outside the ship, even if you're in your room, because we weren't always in space. Like we would be sometimes in in an asteroid field. We would be going through hyperspace. We would be orbiting a strange new planet. So it provoked you to wonder where you were.
How, did you guys feel claustrophobic while you were in there? Or was this convincing enough to kind of take you away from the fact that you were in a building with no windows for multiple days? We haven't gotten to the excursion yet. Actually, we haven't gotten very far at all. So we should probably keep moving. But I will belabor the point to say that, how about this? Like your first night on this, in this hotel, did you, were you guys getting a little stir crazy already?
So there's a really interesting room called the climate simulator, which is basically a balcony, right? But it simulates the region we're about to visit. So Batu, so basically Florida. So you could, if you felt sick of your room or of the building itself, or the Starcruiser, you would call it, you just stepped into a climate simulator, and there are experiences there as well. The Saja, the stories, the Halcyon's versions of the Jedi, because the Jedis don't technically exist post episode 8 and 9, which is where the timeline's set. You get to have interactions with them as well. So this is
wow.
Great. This is essentially a climate simulator. It's a really well done balcony. They had plants, so you wouldn't really feel, I think, at the end of the day, claustrophobic. I think they would be very cognizant of that. On top of that, you just the short excursion the following day, but also you were just really there for 2 days, 2 nights. I think that's probably the right amount of time as well.
Yeah, I remember watching the movie Ex Machina for the first time, and when you have. It just occurred to me that there are 2 Star Wars characters starring in that movie. But when you have Brendan Gleeson, who goes downstairs, and Oscar Isaac showing him his room, he's like, oh yeah, there's no windows. It's probably freaking you out. I was thinking to myself, I could never do that. I could never stay in a basement hotel for 2 days, and I'd go crazy. And I was thinking that, 5 or 6 years ago when that movie came out, and I was so surprised how not claustrophobic at all I felt. The ship itself was spacious enough. The room felt cozy. At no point did I even fresh air. So everything about that was really remarkably well done.
That's
also to keep you so. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
It's just to keep you so busy. I think you just never even had the mental space to feel claustrophobic. I think we're all trying to sort of hit all these story elements we could find, hack into all the consoles we could find. So the datapad app that you had could hack into things, open up new pathways, explore more of the ship. There's just so much to do that I think because you're moving around that much, you never really felt like you were in one place at one time.
Yeah. Yeah, we little spoiler that we did get to talk later on with someone who's a major part of designing the experience, and they told us that every 5 minutes there is properly programmed increments to this whole experience. It's so well thought out. They know where all the actors are going to be. They know where different groups of the audience members will be. And you just feel so well taken care of the entire experience. That's what I felt, was just this sense that I can relax. I'm on this great journey. I can't do anything wrong. I can just enjoy this.
Huh. Right. I think the best advice I was given going on was just try not to min-max everything. Just enjoy it, right? I think if you go in the attitude of trying to see everything, you would actually not be able to see anything, because you wouldn't be able to earn sort of the relationship points to sort of get the special endings you get at the end.
I had never heard anything about that climate zone, or because again, one of the biggest criticisms has always, that I've heard of, has always been it's a crazy amount of money to pay for, this, room, and the experience is cool, but is it worth it? And at the end, I don't say anything. At this point, it's seeming pretty fascinating in the sense that it for me, trying to think about this, I can't think of an experience where being stuck indoors in one space or, one, like if I was stuck in a Walmart for 24 hours, I'd go insane. Right. Like,
Yeah.
And obviously I guess there is lots to do in a Walmart, but that's besides the point, right?
That's true.
I remember one time, and this is a very random story. I was actually on a real boat where I had to sleep overnight, and this was in like Eastern Europe, so it was not like Creature Comforts where it wasn't a cruise, it was a ferry, to be clear. And when we got into our room, there were curtains, and you open them up, and there was no window there, right? It was just like curtains. But I don't know. It sounds like the feedback you're saying is that it almost didn't cross your mind at some point, right? Or maybe the immersion really got you in that zone. I don't know. It's pretty fascinating to hear.
Yeah, they really work you. They take care of you, to be clear, but they also work you. Like, you're tired and exhausted by the end of the first night. And I think my body just never caught up to feeling, that space you need to feel bored or claustrophobic. But then again, that also speaks to the sort of group that we were in. Like, we were bought into sort of like poking at every envelope that we could see, because we're nerds and designers, and we wanted to make sure that we understood how the systems work, right? And also how the narrative propelled everything along. Ooh, this is a good video of lightsaber training.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I was using my my Ray-Bans for a lot of this, so I didn't have to like hold a phone. I could just be doing whatever was going on and record from my eyes. So this is when we got our shields during lightsaber training.
Oh,
you might be wondering, shields for lightsaber training? Yes, they actually had a really good choreographed way to get everyone to sort of participate in lightsaber training, even though like a few of us could only hold a lightsaber at one time. Again, really, really good design, really good choreography. I think everyone had fun in this experience.
Yeah. I just keep thinking about what a challenge something like this is to market, because, you can say like, oh, it's immersive theater or it's like a cruise ship. It's not really like a cruise ship, though, because as David just said, like, you're busy the whole time. You're not meant to just lie down and relax. You could do that, but that would be a bit of a wasted opportunity. Similarly, like children, my understanding is a lot of people who go on cruise ships, they kind of want to let their kids kind of run wild and not think about them. Here, you really do, if you do come with children, you really do need to be like very actively engaged with them and doing missions with them and making sure they don't become too disruptive. Because, kids, especially in a world of Star Wars, are going to be really excited to do all sorts of things. Maybe punch a stormtrooper, which is not something they should do. So they need guidance for like, how do you play appropriately in this world?
Right. And unlike a cruise ship, which has dedicated childcare facilities,
right,
this does not have that, right? So your children are with you, so that there is a compromise and a trade-off that's happening where, like, if you are a hardcore Star Wars parent and you want to get deep into it, you can't really do that because you have your children with you. So yeah, I think to your point, Alex, the marketing is a challenge. I don't think this wasn't ultimately a cruise ship experience, and I think that kind of hurt it, because we then set out expectations of what the value would get for paying a certain amount of money for a cruise ship experience. And this is definitely not that. In some ways, in many ways, exceeds its cruise ship experience. But for those who are going and expecting a cruise ship experience, they might be disappointed.
It's been there for a while.
How was that, Alex? I never tried it. You tried it.
I was a little frustrated with Space Bingo. I thought that it was impossible to feel like you were ever getting enough planets in the same sector. I sat there for 30 minutes and never had more than like 2. So what you're seeing in the image is like, in order to win, you needed to get 1 planet called out in each of the 5 or 6 sectors or something like that. And I never felt like I was even close to winning. But there were a lot of different activities that would kind of be going on at different times of the day. There was little droid racing. The kids loved that. There was a certain version of sabacc. There's a lot of different kinds of sabacc. There was one here that was a little bit like blackjack, a little bit like poker. And some kids were on that all day long. There was also a sabacc tournament, all sorts of things to keep people busy. Also, quick shout out, in case we forget to mention it later, everyone gets this AI droid in their room.
Oh my God, yes.
And adorable. Yeah, David, why don't you talk about this a little bit?
Oh, so I forgot a droid's name already, but definitely
D309 or something.
D309. Yeah, your memory is awesome. So basically, in our cabin, we have a droid concierge, right? Definitely Unreal Engine powered. So huge shout out to tech there. But they did a really good job on two fronts. Like the speech to text, whatever they're using to sort of parse our speech is impeccable. And on the back end, like whatever they're using to process that is also pretty damn good. So it's clearly just, it's not really AI, it's just branching path lines. It's a branching dialogue tree. But they have written enough content that, like, our first conversation with the droid, like, she was like, what brings you to Halcyon? And we're like, adventure. And you're like, oh, adventure. Because I guess that's one of the most common words that people would say. But I would imagine if you said something else, like, it would pick a keyword from that as well. So anyway, this was a fantastic C plot. I think I was telling you about, Alex. Like, I think the conversations and the stories that D309 would tell you about tie in with the larger narrative as well. It was a great experience that I think was highly underrated.
Yeah, spoiler alert, the First Order does eventually take over the ship, and D309 is taken away, and we all felt genuinely sad and upset.
Crushed.
Wow.
Yeah.
We couldn't talk to our droid for a while. Real quick on the droid thing, like, I couldn't believe how many little things could happen here. So you could just have a regular conversation. You could go on side missions. You could have bedtime stories. I'll just mention briefly that I was told, like, oh my God, we're going through like a pirate area and we need to negotiate with these pirates. Will you please help me? And I'm like, I'll do my best. And then like a pirate appears on the little hollow screen and they're like, okay, we only have like 20,000 credits in bribe money. I know the pirates are going to ask for more than that. You just need to argue them down. And I go through like, oh, I mean, there's so much you can buy with these 20,000 credits, blah, 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 blah. And it goes well. And then G309 is like, oh, Alex, thank you so much. You're so impressive. In fact, I think we need to give you a new name. You are the Impressor. And then, like, that's something that just continues for the entire 2 days, where every time I'm speaking to D309, it's like, oh, Alex, the Impressor. It's so good to see you again. Then, David, what were the bedtime stories we were able to hear?
Man, so before we slept every night, like, you know, D309 offered bedtime stories. So I think the first night we got essentially a tale of two heroic droids, captained by the most heroic droid in the universe, R2-D2, and how he singularly, with his friend C-3PO, saved the galaxy from the evil empire. And of course, they also met a moisture farmer along the way. So the whole thing was basically an interpretation of the original Star Wars: A New Hope through the eyes of R2-D2. And it's the way they spun it, like D309 is like, oh, this is like a verbal story I heard passed down from generation to generation.
That's cool. It was so good.
All right,
let's see. Yeah, go ahead, Jacob.
I want to kind of step this back for folks who are trying to relive this experience like me. So first day, you get on, you have a whole lot of activities. Like, give me the list of, as best as you can recall, just the activities that you did in that one first day.
So bridge training, lightsaber training, sabak, saying hi to everyone, our muster, being introduced to the captain and Lenka and Lieutenant Croy and the First Order coming on board. Being told that there was a resistance member on board who some of us may have gotten to spot a little bit before there was an official announcement. So if you do happen to be one of the lucky people who spots Chewbacca in the engine room, that feels like a really cool surprise, a really cool treat. There are some puzzles also in the engine room that you can solve. There's all sorts of little app things going on, little missions. What else, David?
Oh man, they really sort of iterate the point for you to sort of just talk to people. So whether it's other passengers or with cast members, like any good immersive theater experience, they're basically the cast members will come down and full character, and they would already send you on like little missions or little things to do. A lot of them were just conversations, and frankly, I think it's an opportunity just for the cast members to get to know who are the people who are really engaged, to memorize names of people. So there's a lot of like FaceTime, honestly, that we got out of it. At this point in day one, like, it was super. I think they would be very generous on like which pathways you could go to. So they would be really generous. Like, you could talk to Lieutenant Croy, you could talk to the resistance member, you could hang out with Chewie and help him on a secret mission. You could talk to Wraith Cole and help him and uncover a ploy to
to do a heist. There were all these story elements that are letting you unearth through the conversations with the characters. So it was a lot of talking, honestly, that I really enjoyed. But I think, there's for those of us who probably are not that extroverted, there were a lot of app things to do as well, which would also parlay into the paths that you would go to.
Gotcha. Okay. I was about to ask, like, what does introvert do on this, in this experience? But it sounds like maybe the app has a lot more than I'm expecting.
And also, I think a lot of introverts can find that this is a safe space and a place where they can kind of come out of their shell. It really reminds me of, what makes things like fantasy and sci-fi special in general, because it provides this fictional environment for us to talk about key tenets of the human condition in safe ways. We can talk about genocide and rebellions and all these things in a way that is just, outside of the realm of what we're dealing with in the real world, where we can cover those issues in a meaningful way under fiction. Like, I think Andor has been an incredible Star Wars series because of how well it deals with revolution and rebellion and how those things get made and all the complexities with it in an entirely fictional universe, under the cover of Star Wars. So similarly, I think a really well done immersive theater piece, LARPing, anything like it lets people almost do these kinds of social experiments where they feel like they can take on a character, or they can even be themselves a little bit more in a certain capacity, because it is all within this structured, safe environment that is communal and friendly and open. And there are just enough guardrails in place that it's a little different from society. They say some people love video games so much because video games give you very clear win condition, and you can improve on them in a way that is different from the real world, which can also be quite overwhelming. So I just think that even if you are introverted, there are a lot of opportunities here to feel much more comfortable than you might otherwise feel in the real world.
Right. And the magic circle in this case is very clearly drawn, and you can play in that. I just want to shout out again to the cast members who deliberately help introverts come out. And there's a story I keep telling that I'm not sick of telling because I'm just so impressed, because the character who plays Lenka Mock basically identified a really shy young girl. She was about 4 or 5 years old, 5 or 6 maybe. And on the first day, she was super shy. So she made an effort to really talk to her. And by the end of the first day, this 6-year-old who saw herself represented in Lenka Mock basically got a cruise director uniform. So it looks exactly like a small mini version of Lenka Mock. So cute. And I was basically running missions with her, and she was no longer a shy introvert young girl who kept to herself. The character of Lenka Mock made her somehow convinced her to come out of shell to play along with all of us. I have no doubt that her life has been since experience, right? So it's just truly magical. Just what immersive theater can do.
Yeah, there's a level of accessibility here that is really remarkable, because they are trying to make this a comfortable experience for every kind of person. Unless you're a jerk, like jerks need not apply.
Right.
You can hear that there is like a non-diegetic principal's office that you get pulled into if you're
you're in trouble room
experience. But as long as you are, being a good person and friendly and playing along the whole thing. If you are a neurodiverse person, neurodivergent, if you are someone who gets overwhelmed by certain situations easily, they are going to find a way to still make this work for you. We heard a story about someone who was just kind of feeling a little bit too much with the experience on the second night. They stayed in their room, which was, too bad, because there was this incredible dining experience with 5 courses of meals. And guess what they do with the Halcyon? They brought that person all 5 courses of the meals, gave them the whole spiel about what makes each one of them special. And I'm sure that person still felt taken care of. And that's a level of customer service isn't even that sells it short. It's a level of care that I think is it goes beyond what you want to see even in a show like this. It just teaches you how to be a better person and a more caring person and just a better member of a community. So I'd like to think that, just like what David was saying with the little girl who wanted to be Lenka so much, there are lessons that I hope people take from an experience like this back out into the real world. And it just makes everyone a little kinder, a little sweeter, a little more caring. And that's kind of the best thing that can come from something like this.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's very cool. All right. So first day, it sounds like we've already spilled into second and third day, but like
we haven't actually. No, we still haven't even gotten to the finale of the first day, which was, David alluded to it a little bit earlier, but hearing that, this big performer, Gaia, would be there. Their manager, Wraith, was going to be on board.
Right.
Lieutenant Croy in the First Order was kind of throwing a wrench into all that. Like, would the performance still be able to happen? But lo and behold, we do make it to dinner that evening, and we get these incredible meals and drinks and blue milk and green milk and bantha meat and incredible smoking cocktails. And we get to see this Gaia performance. David, what did you think of that?
Oh man, like, so Gaia, they sold her up like as a galactic celebrity. Like, she's an amazing singer. And when she showed up, holy crap, like, this is a genuine performer who basically entertained us for like a proper show. Like, this is Broadway worthy singing performance, and we had it like with our meals. It was a fantastic experience.
That's cool. Wait, can we see this photo or video, whatever Alex is pulling up? I want to see it.
I gotta try to make it not glitchy. Let's see. So here's Wani. Wani is this incredible animatronic. What do you call any music with your hands?
Theremin.
Theremin, thank you. Like a theremin performer, and Gaia was a total rock star. And apparently we got to hear a little bit of the story of the actual performer playing Gaia, who started as a bartender. And I just met on the second day and then have a conversation with later, was telling us how, as a bartender, they could just kind of recognize like this person is actually a star, and got to see them kind of like rise through the ranks and audition for Gaia, and then put on this incredible show and interact with everyone in this way that just felt like the most gracious kind of starlet, like exactly how you hope it would be if you meet someone like a Beyonce or a Taylor Swift or something like that. And it was remarkable.
I just have to say that by the end of the evening, we were just like beaming because performances were amazing. We were bought into the world because we knew exactly who we wanted to talk to already. We were full because the food was completely, like, seriously, I just can't say this enough. Like, it's some of the best cruise ship food, or best sort of fine dining meals I've had that's not a fine dining environment. Like, they would reinterpret food in the Star Warsy ways, right? So you have like, I don't know, like a blue sweetbread. And you give it a Star Warsy name, and it would taste delicious. And it was definitely just cornbread with like some special treatment to it. But man, it was so cool. Like I was a big fan of the food.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you're sitting in this crowd, and were the performers like? This is going to be a bit of a stupid question, but was it like in English and like everything, or were they just like, how weird was it? Is what I want to know.
So I think we all communicated in English, right? Now, Wani to Rodian. So the performer definitely had an animatronic mask on, and she basically, whenever she spoke, it was Rodian, and we would not understand Rodian. But the performer did such a good job of just gesturing and moving, and the expressions on the face are, you have to see this. It has to be seen to be believed, but it's extremely expressive. Like, this is movie quality stuff.
Oh wow!
Right, that you would understand what she's saying. So to answer your question, nope. Some of the folks did not speak English, but we still knew exactly what they were saying, because it's Star Wars. Like, like the same way that Chewbacca like sort of waves his staff and goes, he's not happy, that sort of thing.
This is a very interesting. So for those who are listening to the podcast, we're watching a clip right now, and this is on the left the manager, cool. Right?
The guy's manager. Yep.
Yeah. And what's their name on the right?
Sharing the conversation with Wani, the performer, and it feels like a totally natural conversation between them, even though Wani is speaking a totally alien language.
Yeah, and wearing a very obvious like headpiece mask. At the same time, I'm watching this, and I'm not hearing the audio, by the way. Right. For those who are listening, I'm not hearing the audio either. But if you showed this to me...
Just put up with Nikki.
Not in any galaxy.
You check your computer?
Yeah, I can tell. You want me to do it? Or you want to? So, does anyone know what this is?
Kyber crystal.
No, but it's not. That was a fair guess. This is a singing stone. Mm-hmm. It's a singing stone that stones indigenous to the planet Rylon. Now, as legend would have it, the only way to have a singing stone is to have Gaia, well, in our case, or any Twi'lek, bestow one upon you. Now,
there were so many little moments that explains the history of some artifact or some moment or something that happened on the Halcyon 100 years ago. And like David said, like, it's a lot of conversation, but it's really friggin' good conversation.
And you see what the performers did there. So Wraith was clearly translating for us the same way Han Solo would translate for Chewie, right? So they pulled off alien languages in our faces, and we still understood everything. It's just good tradecraft.
Yeah, and the costumes and everything here, like the actors and actresses in this like seem very comfortable in this role, right? Which I think also, really shows in a clip. And I gotta say, for those who are listening to this episode, it's worth opening up YouTube to watch a few of these clips, because it is pretty fascinating. But they seem comfortable here. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. You can see just the quality of like talent that they clearly brought into this project. And it's a little sad, obviously, to hear that they're going to close for many reasons. But for one, to see such talented people who've clearly invested a lot of time into making these characters feasible. Yeah, I mean, so cool to see.
We got to hear a little bit about what happens in the green room, which is, even when these actors are having their time off, they are gushing to each other about all the interactions and experiences they're having with the audience members. They're saying, oh, you have to go talk to David, or you have to go talk to Dante. We just had this interaction that was like this. And all of that just helps, foster this spirit where, again, you just feel like these people are so real and engaged with you. And it just makes the experience so special and unlike anything I think any of us have ever done before.
They really do a magical job of making you feel like this is your special adventure. So they go the extra mile of remembering your name, remembering what you did with them. And I just have no idea how they did that. But by the end of the first dinner, remember, like our server slipped me a secret message.
Yeah.
Right. And it was just because I hung out with Wraith Cole, I think. So he was like, oh, give this to David. So like we had a separate mission that was just like it's incredible. All right. And that just reminds me as well. Like we were such fans of Wani, because I know we're talking about Wani. Like I think at the end of that evening as well, like our table led on by Kevin, we were just like Wani. It was hilarious.
Yeah, and it's like, again, it's in the structure of a cruise ship. Like, of course, you go to a cruise ship and you'd see, a live performer. So like that all feels familiar enough, but then within this guise of like, oh, but also Lieutenant Croy's there, and how's he going to feel about this performance? And that there's going to be an interaction between Gaia and him, and this concern that there's rebel sympathizers or resistance sympathizers on board. So there's just that like extra little level of tension that just keeps you engaged, even though the primary form of the event, just a live cruise performance with a amazing dinner, that would be enough on its own.
Yeah.
So there's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
There's so much to talk about. We're only at the end of the first night. Should we fast forward a little bit? Is there going to be a part 2? How do you guys want to do this? Because
I'm happy to keep going.
I think we could do a part 2 on this episode. Personally, I think there is enough content here. Look, I'm not going to stop. I gotta hear this story out. So we'll leave it up to the edit. But maybe this is a good point to cut to a part 2 where we pick this back up. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I think we could do that. Real quick, for what I have on screen right now, David, can you tell us what this was? This was a cool moment of collaboration among.
You got it. Yeah. So this was basically what they did was they slipped us a secret message, like I mentioned just now, and we were only slipped 1/3 of the secret message. And it was written in ink down there, like this is like 1, 2, or 3, or 3 or 3. So you had to go to the other tables and sort of piece together this message. And once you do that, the entire message is revealed, and that's when they reveal to you a story element. So should we get into the details about a story element here, Alex? I feel like
sure.
Wait. This is the moment. This is where we're going to pause.
Oh, right, that's here. The moment to cut and
all right.
Come back.
Gotcha. Okay.